Hey guys, I'm T and welcome to the channel. If you're new here, we make trendy and fun crochet tutorials twice a week, and if you haven't already, smash that like button, drop a comment down below, and subscribe to join in on the fun. In today's tutorial, we're making the cutest top with tons of texture, an eye-drawing mock neck and chest piece combo, and the frilliest of butterfly peplums. What more could a gal ask for? Speaking of, if you're searching for stylish crochet projects to add to your to-do pile, you are in the right place. We have hundreds of modern crochet tutorials and patterns with even more dropping twice weekly, so consider clicking the bell to subscribe and you'll never miss an upload. Also, do me a huge favor and give this video a big thumbs up if you like it, or 2 thumbs down if you don't. Either way, it's a great way to show support so I can keep putting out free tutorials every Wednesday and Sunday. Now, it's time to get on the show, so without further ado. For this project, any category 4 yarn will work, but I used a total of 285 grams of yarn. That's 630 yards if you're stateside. As for tools, a 5.5mm hook, scissors, stitch markers, and a tape measure. There is a written pattern down below. Use offer code TCDDIY for a discount off any $9.99 plus order, and enter this week's pattern giveaway by telling us if you'd rather be crocheting on the beach or in the mountains. Now, considering that I don't know how to swim, I think that I would have to choose the mountains. Details for the giveaway down below. We're using 4 stitches for this project, and they'll be as follows. Chain, slip stitch, single crochet, half double crochet, and double crochet. This tutorial is made for a size small. You can adjust it for your size, and we explain how to in the video, so let's get started. Getting this top started, we're all going to grab our category 4 yarn and make a slip knot. Then we're all going to grab our 5.5mm hook and start off the same for every size because we're all starting with our cups first. So start with a chain 1. Once we have that chain 1, we're all going to do a chain 2. Now that chain 2 doesn't count as a stitch, that's our turning chain. Then from here, we're all going to start with an increase of 3 half double crochets into that chain that we blocked off. So yarn over, into that first chain, insert your hook, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 3, 2 more into that same chain, pull through 3, there's our second, and 1 more, pull through 3. Now for everyone's row 1, we should all have 3 stitches. Now getting started on our row 2, we're going to chain 2 and flip our work. We are going to get started with our sedge stitch, and the first sedge stitch of every sedge stitch row, unless stated otherwise, is just going to be 1 half double and 1 double crochet into that first stitch. So starting with the yarn over, inserting into that first stitch with 1 half double, then into that same stitch, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, pull through 2. Now that is always going to be our first sedge stitch. Now after our sedge stitch, we are going to just skip that next available stitch and then do an increase into the next. So the increases for this portion of our piece is going to be 1 single, 2 half doubles, and 1 double crochet all into that last stitch. So we're going to skip 1 into the next, starting with a single crochet, 2 half doubles into that same last stitch. So there's 1, there is my second, and also a double crochet all into that last stitch. So far, for everyone's row 2, we should all have a total of 6 stitches. Now let's get started on our row 3. We're going to chain 2 and flip. Now for every odd number row, we are not going to be doing any increases or decreases. So what we're going to do is do our first sedge stitch, which is, like I said, 1 half double and 1 double crochet all into that first stitch. And that's just for the first one. Then the rest of our sedge stitches is going to be 1 single, 1 half double, 1 double into the same stitch. So now after we finish up our first sedge stitch, we are always going to be skipping the following 2 stitches. So there's 1, there's 2, which should also be our single crochet from our previous row to get the texture that we want. We're going to insert with a single, also with a half double, and also with a double crochet. Now from here we should all have just 2 stitches left. Since we aren't doing any increases or decreases, simply single crochet into that last stitch. So skip 1, into that next with a single crochet. Now everyone's row 3 is complete. We should all still have a total of 6 stitches. Now getting started on row 4, we're going to chain 2 and flip. Now for every even number row, we're always going to close off the row with an increase. So just to get this row started, the first sedge stitch, remember, is always just a half double and a double crochet. After our sedge stitch, skip 2 stitches into the next with a single half double double. So there's one, there's my half, there's my double. Now we should all have 2 stitches left. Into that last stitch, we're going to do our increase, which is still going to be 1 single, 2 half doubles, and 1 double. So skip 1 into the last stitch with a single, my first half double, my second half double, and also my double crochet. Now, at the end of our row 4, we shall have a total of 9 stitches, and from here it's going to be a repeat of rows 3 and 4 until we get the cup width that we want. So let's just get started on the following 2 rows to make sure we have it done. So getting started on any odd number row, chain 2 and flip. Now remember, odd number rows don't have any increases or decreases. So get started with the row with our first sedge stitch. So 1 half double, 1 double, all into that first stitch. Skip 2 stitches into the next, 1 single, 1 half double, 1 double, and continue on with that sedge stitch till we have 2 stitches left. So just to complete the row together, skip 1, skip 2, into the next with a single, half double, and double. Now we should all have 2 stitches left, so close off the row with just 1 single crochet into that last stitch. Now this row, our row 5, should still have 9 stitches. Now getting started on row 6, chain 2, flip our work, start with our first sedge, which is half double and double, skip 2, into the next, single, half double, double. Again, skip 2, into the next, single, half double, and double. Now we would continue that until we have 2 stitches left, but since we already have 2 stitches left, we're going to close the row off with an increase. So skip 1, into the last with a single, 2 half double, there's 1, there's 2, and a double. From here, all we're going to do is continue to repeat our 2 previous rows until we now have a portion that can reach from mid-chest, making sure that our tail end is still staying at mid-chest and the blunt end is staying where our underwire would lay, so right at our underbust, all the way over to the corner of our underarm, because we would like for this cup to be narrow and wide. Then I'll meet you guys back right after an odd number row, then we can finish up with our underarm. We are back. I have just completed the increased portion of my cup. Now I have a total of 13 rows. My total width is roughly 5.5 inches or 14 centimeters, and my height is also 5.5 inches or 14 centimeters. Now from here, we're all going to get started on our underarm. So what we're all going to do, no matter what size we're making, still, is insert a stitch marker into the 3rd stitch from the top. Then from here, we're going to get started on our following row. So chain 2, flip our work. Do the same sedge stitches, making our way all the way up, leaving 5 stitches right before our stitch marker stitch. So we made our way up, leaving the last 5 stitches right before our stitch marker. Now from here, we're going to close off the row with a decrease of 4 double crochets. So what we're all going to do is yarn over, skip that next stitch, and into the next, we're going to insert, pull through, next stitch, pull through, next stitch, pull through, next stitch, and pull through for a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 loops on our hook. We're all going to yarn over and pull through the first 5 loops. To get 2 loops on our hook, then yarn over, pull through 2. And that is how we're going to do our decreases. Now the following row is going to be a non-increase or decrease row. So chain 2, flip our work, and then make our way all the way down. So we are back. Our first 2 underarm rows are complete. Now all we're going to do is continue to repeat our 2 previous rows until we have an underarm portion where the height is roughly 1 inch underneath our underarm, making sure that the blunt end is still being placed where our underwire would sit. And I actually already have my underarm portion completed. I don't need to do any more of these decrease rows, so I'm just going to talk you guys through the following row. Since we're along the bottom, chain 2, flip our work. we're going to do our sedge stitch all the way up, leaving the last 5 stitches. Then when we have those 5 stitches, do a decrease of 4 double crochets, and the following row will not have any increases or decreases. But once we have our underarm portion completed, we're then just going to do our sedge stitch rows with no increases and no decreases until we now have a portion that can reach over to mid underarm. And I'll meet you guys back once we have the entirety of this underarm portion completed, right after an even number row. We are back. I have just completed the entirety of one of my cups. Now I have a total of 18 rows. My width is roughly 7 inches or 18 centimeters, and once we have one, we're going to be making a second one that is exactly the same. Once we have both of them completed, I will meet you guys back so we can do our back panel together. So getting started on our back panel, we're all going to start by making a chain for the same amount of stitches that we have for our last row for our front panel. So for those of you that have my numbers, I have a total of 15 stitches. So for my back panel, I'm going to start with a chain 15. Now from here, we're going to do our sedge stitch row, and at the end it with an increase. So block off that last chain and do a chain 2. Doesn't count as a stitch, that's our turning chain. Then do our first sedge stitch into that chain that we blocked off, or the third chain from our hook. Then do our normal sedge stitches all the way up till we have 2 chains left. So we've made our way all the way up with our sedge stitches, leaving the last 2 chains. Now we're going to do the same increases that we did for the front panel. So we're going to skip that second to last chain and into the last insert with 1 single, with 2 half doubles, and then also with 1 double crochet all into that last chain. And our following row will not have any increases or decreases. So chain 2, flip our work into our sedge stitch all the way down. So the increases are going to be done pretty much the same way as the front panel, and since we already know how to do this, continue to repeat those 2 rows until we now have a portion that can reach from mid underarm all the way over to the side of the base of our neck. Now the increase portion doesn't need to touch the side of the base of our neck, it just needs to align with it, but I'll meet you guys back right after an odd number row or along the top so we can work on the back panel width together from there. Alright, we are back. My underarm portion for my back panel is complete. I have a total of 11 rows, and my width is roughly 4 inches or 10 centimeters. Now from here, we're all going to make a chain that is in multiples of 3 that reaches the top of our shoulder, or right at the base of our neck if we're measuring it along our back. So I went ahead and already measured mine out. I needed a chain of 15, that's roughly 4 inches or 10 centimeters. So I made that, and all we're going to do from here is more sedge stitch rows with absolutely no increases and no decreases until we have a portion that can stretch across the base of our neck. Then I will meet you guys back along the bottom or after an even number row so we can finish up with our underarm together from there. So we are back. I have just completed the width of my back panel. I now have a total of 26 rows. My width is roughly 8.5 inches or 22 centimeters, that is unstretched. Now from here we're going to finish up with our underarm. So what we're all going to do is start by inserting our stitch marker into the same amount of chains that we made that led up to our shoulder. So for those of you that have my numbers, I made a chain 15. So on this side, from the top, I inserted my stitch marker into the 15th stitch. Now from here, we're going to do our sedge stitch, per usual, making our way all the way up, leaving 5 stitches right before our stitch marker. So we are back. We made our way down, leaving the last 5 stitches right before our stitch marker. Now from here, just like how we did the front panel's underarm, we're all going to do a decrease of 4 double crochets. Starting with the yarn over, skip that next stitch into the next, insert, pull through, next stitch, pull through, next stitch, pull through, next stitch, pull through for a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 loops on our hook. Then yarn over, pull through the first 5 to get 2 loops, then yarn over, pull through 2. Now our following row isn't going to have any increases or decreases, so chain 2, flip our work. Make our way all the way down with our sedge stitch row. Then from there, it's going to be a repeat of those 2 rows until we have the same amount of rows as our first underarm portion. Once we do a chain up of 1 and cut, and then I will meet you back. So we are back, and my back panel is complete. Now I have a total of 37 rows. This width is roughly 12 inches or 30 centimeters. Now we can get started on the rest. So getting started on the front panel chest detail, what we're going to do is insert our hook into the top corner stitch of one of our front panels. Then we're going to do a single crochet row connecting both of them together. But since we're just working in one, we're going to put one away for now. Start by inserting our yarn onto our hook, pull through, and do a chain up of 1 to secure. Now what we're all going to do from here is alternate between 1 to 2 single crochets into every side row. So into our first side row that we have right here, we're going to insert, starting with just 1 single crochet. Now into our next side row, which is this one right here. I'm going to find that top loop and insert with 2 singles. So there's 1 into that same top loop with a second single crochet. Let's do the next set of rows together. This is my next side row, so find that top loop and insert, starting with just 1 single crochet. Into that next side row, insert your hook in through that top loop with 2. So there's 1, and then there is 2. We're going to continue on with this, making our way all the way down until we're worked into our last side row. So we have made our way all the way down with our single crochets. Now from here, we're going to continue to do our single crochet row, working our way up the other front panel that we have, but in between we are going to do a chain 1 and insert our stitch marker so we know where our middle stitch is. At the end of our first front panel, chain 1 and insert a stitch marker into that chain space. Then start with single crocheting across the top, again alternating between 1 to 2 single crochets into every side row. We should have the same amount of stitches on both sides. So into that first top loop, insert with 1, into that next top loop, insert with 2, and make your way all the way up. So our single crochet row is complete. Now the following row is just going to be a back loop slip stitch row, but just as a really quick tip, our 2 front panels are only connected through that chain space. If you guys want to tie these 2 tail ends together, go ahead and do that just to make it a little bit more sturdy. So now from here, to get started on our following row, chain 1 and flip. So finding the first stitch from our previous row, we're all going to need to find that back loop. So this is my first stitch. Insert your hook into that back loop or the loop that's furthest away from us. When we have these 2 loops on our hook, simply yarn over and gently pull through both loops on our hook. We want to make sure that we're not tugging too tightly, otherwise the following row will be too tight to work into. So doing the next one, into that next stitch's back loop, yarn over and gently pull through everything again, and continue with 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch to reach the end of the row. And we do want to make sure that we're inserting our stitch marker into that middle stitch as well. Our second row for our chest detail is complete. Now from here we're going to do a back loop half double crochet row with a decrease in the middle. So from where we're at, chain 2 and flip. Now we're just going to be doing back loop half double crochets. So yarn over, into that first stitch's back loop or the loop that's furthest away from us, insert with 1 back loop half double, and from here put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch until we are 1 stitch before our middle stitch marker stitch. So we've made our way down with our back loop half double crochets, leaving 1 stitch right before a stitch marker. Now we're just going to do a decrease of 3 back loop half doubles. So yarn over, into that next stitch's back loop, we're going to insert, pull through. Also insert your hook into that next stitch's back loop. I'm going to take out my stitch marker for now. Insert into that back loop, pull through, then also insert your hook into that next stitch's back loop. Yarn over, pull through till we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 loops on our hook, then yarn over, pull through all 5. That is our decrease. And don't forget to insert your stitch marker into the top of that stitch. From here, continue on with 1 back loop half double crochet into the rest of our stitches. Our first 3 rows for our chest detail are complete. Now what we're going to do from here is just continue to repeat our 2 previous rows until this reaches the base of our neck. So it's just going to be a back loop slip stitch row with no increases and no decreases, and a back loop half double crochet row with a decrease of 3 in the middle. I will meet you back once when this reaches the base of our neck, right after a slip stitch row. We are back and my chest detail is complete. Counting from my first single crochet row, I have a total of 22 rows. This height just for the chest detail is roughly 5 inches or 13 centimeters. Now we're all just going to do our last row. Our last row is going to be done pretty much the same way as our other rows, but we do want to slightly even it out, so we're going to start with some single crochets first. So at the end of our back loop slip stitch row, chain 1 and flip. This is going to be super duper simple. Start the row off with 2 back loop single crochets. So into that first stitch, insert with 1 back loop single. Into that next with another back loop single. From here, continue with 1 back loop half double crochet, maintaining the decrease of 3 in the middle. Then I'll meet you back when we have 2 stitches left. Now we've made our way down, leaving the last 2 stitches. Now just put 1 back loop single crochet into each of the last 2 and do a chain up of 1 and cut. Now we can get started on seaming it together. So seaming our 2 panels together, we're all going to start by placing our front panel on top of our back panel, making sure that the ribbing for the front panel detail is faced down because we want this side seam to be within the inside. Then we're going to be inserting our hook into the bottom corner stitch of both the front and the back panel. Then we're going to pull through and do a chain up of 1 just to secure. Now we're just going to single crochet our panels together. So finding that first stitch into the front panel, insert, first stitch into the back panel, insert, and single crochet around everything. Again, next stitch into the front panel, next stitch into the back panel, and single crochet, and continue this till we don't have any more stitches left. When we don't, do a chain up of 1 and cut, and repeat on the other side. Alrighty, so now that everything is all seamed up, the next thing we're going to do is our neckline. So first things first, we're all going to make sure that our work is slipped right side out, meaning the seams that we just did are along the inside. Then we're going to be inserting our hook into the top corner stitch of our back panel detail, and we're going to be working across our back panel first. All we're going to do is alternate between 1 to 2 single crochets into every side row till we reach the corner. So we're all going to pull our working yarn through and do a chain up of 1 to secure. Finding our first side row, this is mine right here, I'm going to find that top loop and insert, starting with just 1 single crochet. This is my following side row, so I'm going to find that top loop and insert with 2 single crochets. So there's 1, and then there's 2. Again, this is my next side row, so find that top loop and insert, starting with just 1. Into our next side row, this is mine, insert with 2. So there is 1, and then there is 2, and continue with this to reach the corner. So we are back, and we have just worked our way across the top of our back panel. Now from here we're going to make a chain that can reach up and over our shoulder to the front panel's top corner. But just as a really quick tip, what we're doing is 2 things. We're forming our neck hole, so this does need to be wide enough to fit around our head, but we're also forming our armholes, so we want to make sure that that strap isn't too wide, and we also don't want it to be too small, giving us an armhole that's too tight. So I went ahead and already measured mine out. Just for this one side, I needed roughly 3.5 inches or 9 centimeters, so I'm going to start by making a chain 13. Now that we have our chain, we're going to connect it into the front panel's top corner stitch, and we're going to insert it with a single crochet. That is going to count as the connection, but also as the first stitch for this portion. From here, put 1 single crochet into every stitch, working our way across. Now from here, we're going to make the same chain that we made on this side. So for those of you that have my numbers, I made a chain 13, so I went ahead and made a chain 13. Now we're going to connect it to the back panel, so let's flip our work over. Now connecting this to the beginning of our single crochet row, we're going to slip stitch it into that chain space. Now from here, we're going to chain 1, and working in the same direction as our previous row, simply put 1 single crochet into every stitch and chain, making our way around. And just as a really quick tip, this single crochet row is going to be as wide as this portion can stretch. So once when it's completed, try your piece on, making sure that it still fits nicely around everything. If it's a little bit too tight, reduce some stitches with a looser grip, or if it's too loose, reduce some stitches with a tighter grip. We made our way all the way around with our single crochet row. We've slip stitched into that chain space. Now from here, we're all going to make a chain the length that we'd like for our mock neck to be. I'd like for mine to be roughly 2 inches or 5 centimeters, so I went ahead and made a chain 8. When we have our chain, we're going to block off that last chain and do a chain 1. Into that chain that we blocked off, the second chain from our hook, we're going to insert with a slip stitch. And from here, put 1 slip stitch into every chain, remembering not to tug too tightly, otherwise the following row will be too tight to work into. We've made our way down with our first slip stitch row. Now we're going to connect it into the base, so what we're going to do is just find that next available stitch into the base, insert with a slip stitch. Now that slip stitch into the base doesn't actually count as a stitch, that's just to connect. Then to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch into that next stitch into the base, still doesn't count as a stitch. Flip our work and now put 1 back loop, slip stitch into every stitch. So finding the first stitch from our previous row, not working into those slip stitches into the base, we're going to insert in through that back loop, then yarn over, pull through everything, and from here continue with 1 back loop slip into every stitch. At the end of the row, chain 1, flip our work, 1 back loop slip into every stitch again, and I'll meet you back at the end of our row 3. Now from here, we're going to connect it into the base again, just to make sure we all got it, and it is going to be done the same way as our previous row. So finding that next stitch into the base, insert with a slip, doesn't count as a stitch. Next stitch into the base with another slip stitch, still doesn't count as a stitch. Flip our work and repeat our 2 previous rows till we don't have any more stitches left. Then I'll meet you back to seam it up. So we are back. We've made our way all the way around with our back loop slip stitch rows. We don't have any more stitches left to work into, so now we're going to seam it together by doing an outside loop slip stitch seam so it can look like another slip stitch row. So making sure that our work is slipped right side out, we're going to insert our hook into the corner stitch of both the front and the back panel. We're going to yarn over, pull through, and do a chain up of 1 to secure. Now from here, find that first stitch into the front panel and insert only into that front loop. First stitch into the back panel and insert only into that back loop. Then yarn over and pull through everything on our hook. Let's do that again. Next stitch into the front panel, insert only into that front loop. Next stitch into the back panel, insert only into that back loop. yarn over, pull through everything, and continue doing this until we don't have any more stitches left to work into. When we don't, do a chain up of 1 and cut. Now that our mock neck is all seamed up, we're ready to get started on the bottom peplum detail. So first things first, we're all going to start by making sure that our work is flipped right side out, right side up, and insert our hook into any one of the stitches along the bottom of our piece. Then from here, all we're going to do is alternate between 1 to 2 single crochets into every side row, making our way all the way around. But one last really quick tip, this single crochet row is going to be as wide as this portion can stretch. So try our piece on once when it's completed. If it's a little too tight, we'd use some stitches with a looser grip, or if it's too loose, we'd use some stitches with a tighter grip. And we all need to make sure that our single crochet row is in multiples of 4. So if you need to add an additional stitch or 2 into that last side row, go ahead and do that, and then I'll meet you back. Alright, so we are back. I've just completed my single crochet row. I have a total of 112 single crochets. Now what we're going to do from here, we're going to need to separate the middle and the sides. So how that's going to work is we're first going to find our 2 middle stitches, and the 2 middle stitches are going to be the 2 stitches that we have that's nearest to each other, that's on one half of the cup, and then the first stitch that we have on the other side of the cup. So I went ahead and inserted my 2 stitch markers into there. Now from there, since our single crochet row should be in multiples of 4, we're just going to divide our number by 4 and then insert our stitch markers into that number. Now since the total amount of single crochet rows that I have is 112, 112 divided by 4 is 28. So from one stitch marker, I counted out 28 stitches, inserted my stitch marker. That is 1/4. Into that next stitch, I inserted my next stitch marker and then counted out another 28, insert a stitch marker, and then just repeated that, making my way all the way around. We should have the same amount of stitches from stitch marker to stitch marker for all 4 of the sides that we have. Now once we have that, we can get started on the peplum portion. Now the peplum detail is going to be done in 4 sections, and we're going to seam up the sides, but we do want to make sure that wherever we're getting started, it needs to be within the front or the back panel and not the sides, because we want it to meet in the middle. Now what we're going to do from here is insert our hook into one of our middle stitch marker stitches. As you guys can see, I already have 3 of my other panels completed, but what we're going to do is insert our yarn onto our hook, and the increases are going to be done roughly the same way as the increases for the cup. So we're going to start with an increase of 3 half double crochets all into that middle stitch. So we have pulled through and did a chain 2. That chain 2 doesn't count as a stitch, and into the same stitch that our chain 2 is in, an increase of 3 half doubles. So into that same first stitch with 1, same first stitch with a second, and same first stitch with a third. Now we're going to connect it into the base, and the base is going to be the single crochet that's along the bottom of our piece. So just finding that next available stitch into the base, we're going to insert with a slip stitch. Now that slip stitch doesn't actually count as a stitch, that's just to connect. Then to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch into that next available stitch, into the base, flip our work. Now we're going to do an increase. So we're going to start with our first sedge stitch, which is always a half double and double into that first stitch, not into any of those slip stitches into the base. So into that first stitch from our row 1, insert with a half double and double. Then we should all have 2 stitches left. Into that last stitch, an increase. So 1 single, 2 half doubles, and 1 double crochet all into that last stitch. And now everyone's row 2 is completed. From here we're going to chain 2 and flip. Now we're going to do our row 3, which is a sedge stitch row with no increases and no decreases. So do our first sedge stitch, which is a half double and double into that first stitch. Skip 2 stitches into the next with a single half double double. Then we should all have 2 stitches left. So close off the row with just 1 single crochet into that last stitch. Now we're going to connect it into the base. But connecting it into the base is going to be a little bit differently than our previous row because we want it to ruffle along the top. So what we're all going to do is slip stitch it into the last stitch that our previous row was worked into. So this is my previous stitch from the base. It is occupied, so we are going to insert our hook into that same stitch with a slip stitch to connect. Then we need to work our way up to the following row, so slip stitch into that following stitch into the base. And from there, flip our work, and we're going to get ready for our row 4. Our row 4 is not going to have any increases or decreases either because we don't want it to increase too quickly. So do our sedge stitch all the way down, and into that last stitch, 1 single crochet. Now since we're all starting off our peplum the same and we all just completed our row 4, we should have a total of 6 stitches. And row 5 we are not going to increase either, so chain 2, flip our work, and do our sedge stitch all the way down, closing off the row with a single crochet for a total of 6 stitches at the end of our row 5. So everyone's row 5 is complete. Now we're going to connect it into the base the same way that we just did. So into the last stitch that our previous row was worked into that occupied stitch, insert with a slip. Then to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch into that next stitch into the base, flip our work. Now starting with our row 6, we're going to be increasing into every 4th row. So our row 6 will be an increased row. So starting with our first sedge stitch into that first stitch from our previous row, continue on with our sedge stitches until we all have 2 stitches left. Now we are nearly complete with our row 6. We should all have 2 stitches left. To do our increase, it will be the same as our cup. So into that last stitch, we're going to do 1 single, 2 half doubles. So there's 1, there's 2, and then also a double crochet into that same last stitch. Just like that, our row 6 is complete, and now everyone should have a total of 9 stitches. Now from here, rows 7, 8, 9, so the following 3 rows will not have any increases or decreases. So chain 2, flip our work. Do our sedge stitch all the way down, closing off the row with a single crochet. Connect it into the base the same way that we just did, and I'll meet you back when we have a total of 9 rows. So we are back. We have just completed a total of 9 rows. Now, just as a really quick tip, I do like to insert a stitch marker into the edge of my increased row just so it's a little bit easier to keep track of. But from here, all we're going to do is continue to repeat our 4 previous rows until we reach our side stitch marker stitch and we're worked into that stitch. We are back. We have just completed one side of our peplum. Now, once we have one side completed, we're going to do the same thing on the other side, remembering that the beginning of the peplum needs to start within either the front or the back because the length needs to be where the sides are. But once we have the second one completed, I will meet you guys back, but do not do a chain up 1 and cut because then we can seam everything together from there. But once we do have the second one, it is going to be the same single crochet seam that we did for the sides. So let's all start by making sure the work is flipped wrong side out because we want all the seams to be along the inside. All we're going to do is start by finding that first stitch into the front panel, insert, first stitch into the back panel, insert, and single crochet, and that's it. Continue doing this, making our way all the way down. When we don't have any more stitches left to work into, we're going to repeat everything we did here on the other side, and then I'll meet you back. We are back and our peplum is complete. Both the front and the back panel are all done. Now we're going to finish this up by cleaning up our armholes. So first things first, we're all going to start by making sure that our work is flipped right side out, right side up. Then start by inserting your hook into the stitch that we have that's nearest to our front panel within the neckline. So just into that next available stitch. Then working our way down our front panel, we are going to have some side half doubles and side slip stitch rows. We're going to be putting 2 single crochets into every side half double and skip over our side slip stitch rows. So start by pulling our yarn through and do a chain up of 1 just to secure. Now into our first side row, this is mine right here, it's going to be a side single crochet row, so just find that top loop and insert with 1 single crochet. We're going to skip over that following side row, insert into that next top loop, which is our side half double with 2 singles. Skip the side slip into that next side half doubles top loop with 2 singles. Continue doing this until we reach our first cup side row. So we've just made our way down with our single crochets until we're worked into our last side half double, then into that last side single crochet row that we have on the other side of our side slip stitch row, insert with just 1. Then continue with our single crochet row. Into each side sedge stitch row, alternate between 1 to 2 single crochets and 1 single crochet into every stitch, and I'll meet you back when we don't have any more stitches left. So we've just made our way all the way up the back portion. Now we're just going to slip stitch it into that next available stitch that we have into our neckline, do a chain up of 1 and cut. So we are back. Our single crochet row along our armhole is complete. Now we're going to get started on our armhole detail. So all we're going to do is insert our hook into the stitch that we have within the bottom of the neckline for the width that we'd like for the armhole detail to be. Now keeping in mind that it is going to be worked all the way up and then connected into the other side as well. So make sure the amount of stitches isn't over half the amount of chains that you made for your neckline. So I'm going to start by flipping my work right side out, right side up, and insert my hook into the 5th stitch away from my single crochet row. I'm now going to insert my yarn onto my hook, I'm going to pull through, do a chain up of 1 to secure, and starting with the same stitch that our chain is in, 1 single crochet into every stitch towards my single crochet row. Now that I put 1 single crochet into every stitch and I am near my single crochet row, which is now my base, I'm going to slip stitch it into the base the same way that we did for the collar. So just find that next available stitch, insert your hook in through there with a slip stitch to connect. That slip stitch doesn't count as a stitch. Now from here, all we're going to do is back loop slip stitch rows with no increases and no decreases, the same way we did the collar, making our way all the way down and back up. When we don't have any more stitches left to work into, I'll meet you back so we can seam it together. We are back. My armhole band is complete. Now we're just going to seam it up, but I have already went ahead and seamed mine up because it is going to be the same seam that we did for the sides. So as a refresher, make sure the work is flipped wrong side out because we want the seam to be along the inside now. Then just press the bottom of our collar and our arm detail together and do the same single crochet seam that we already did. Then once we have one completed, go ahead and get the other side done as well. We are back and we have just completed both of our armhole details and we are all done. Last thing we have to do is just weave in all of our ends. And there you have it, y'all. Hope you enjoyed the tutorial. Join us on Instagram, Pinterest, or Twitter. Those links are down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I'll catch you on the next one. Bye!